also be joining us later on.
Yes.
So there'll be a bit of dancing. Bansi is our weekend cue. Ukimwona hapo unajua weekend.
Weekend
imefika.
Tuko wapi tuna-avoid.
Aha, tuangazie magazeti na Taifa Leo inasema baraza la wanasiasa. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele.
The Standard MPs live up to their laundry tag yet again.
Kazi yao ni kuosha tu. Judiciary under siege, the big headline there on the front page of the Daily Nation. We have an image there of all the 7 judges of the Supreme Court.
And People Daily, how Ruto built abduction squad.
Wow. I think the scariest headline this morning. Matters Business, top counties in borrowed shared phone use revealed. What exactly is that? Top counties in borrowed shared phone use revealed.
Zile counties ambazo zinatumia simu ambazo zimeombwa kwa majirani, mkopa, those ones.
Counties zenyewe? Oh.
Kabisa.
Interesting.
Yeah. Daily Monitor, that is in Uganda. Are you eating your way to the grave?
Yes. Now, Daily Monitor, when it comes to Friday, we're on a change maneno kabisa. Now, this is the front page, and it's the only story on the front page, if you notice.
Yes.
Then they do some very lovely graphics hapo na chakula, kuna mkate,
yes.
kuna
machipo.
Chakula ya weekend pia iko hapo.
That is alcohol.
So they're saying the thoughtful choices between tasty and finger-licking foods and the safe alternatives and balancing increased physical activities against inactive lifestyle can make a whole difference in the quality of your life. Now, this is a story on the front page. Can you imagine this being on the front page of
it's actually nice.
Yeah.
Namba kula tu, lakini consequences ziko.
Ukiangalia Kenya tu hapa judiciary under siege, shida, ghost workers. Hatukuwa tumeangalia ya State House ghost workers exposed. Wow. Interesting. That is a Daily Monitor. Still in Uganda.
5 EC bosses suspended.
That's a new vision.
Yep. Now, damning dossier to president implicates officials in gross mismanagement. That story is on page 6 of the new vision.
Na sura zao zimeanikwa hapo juu. Hakuna kujificha.
Yep. Faces behind Citibank robbery. Pia wameanikwa hapo on page 10 of the new vision. Kivumbi replaces Mpunga in NUP. These ones are on election next year. Yes.
Kuna pesa zimeibwa hapa. Anasema 896 million shillings PDM funds stolen, says AG report. Na pia Uganda wamesign deals na UAE, sio Kenya peke yake. Museveni yako pale na akiwa pale at the Royal Palace in Sharjah by His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al-Qasimi. Yes. So that is as far as Uganda is concerned. Tuangazie Tanzania, and we start off with the Citizen.
How internet boom is changing Tanzania's digital landscape. Now, the surging demand for a multitude of digital services across diverse sectors such as education, business, and healthcare has significantly heightened internet usage kule Tanzania, transforming how people connect and learn.
Yes. They're still way behind Kenya, but at least there's a boost. Internet boom. Pale Tanzania, it's a very vast country. Even the road network is still way behind. And then something interesting, SGR yao ni ya stima. Lakini sasa kuna shida. Stima upotea.
And you know, I saw something like that. Stima pia zinapotea all over Tanzania.
So stima inapotea na hawana any other source of electricity. So imagine you're in a train and then it's passing through like SGR to Mombasa at the Savo. You've heard of the man-eaters of Savo. And then stima inapotea mkiwa hapo katikati. Then it gets really hot inside the train. You can't even stay. If you have a baby, you have to get out. Sa mnakaa hapo nje na mnaona simba ndio wala anakuja. But at least there's an internet boom. Tusiwapige majirani sana. Wanafanya vyema.
ACT leader to challenge Samia for presidency in 2025 election. That is, this is Dorothy. Full story on page 2.
So kina mama Tanzania washaamua. Kumbe once you break the ice ceiling, then anyone else can do it.
Yes.
That's interesting. Congratulations to them.
Zanzibar says tourism on the rise despite health insurance charge. Now, the tourism minister says since the insurance scheme was implemented on October 1st last year, the number of tourists has increased by 17% each month.
right?
This is very, very true. Watu hupenda sana Zanzibar.
Yes, many Kenyans are now going to Zanzibar.
Yeah.
I think tumechoka na Diani hapa kwenda hapa Watamu kila wakati, wasatu wanaenda Zanzibar.
Lakini to embrace pia Takawiri Kenyans, please.
Takawiri.
Yes, you know, people don't know that the Nyanza region also has very good...
Takawiri is in Nyanza?
Yes.
I need to go there. Yeah. You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Kwenye gazeti la Mwananchi wanasema kata ya umeme. Nilizungumzia kata ya umeme inavyopasua kichwa.
Yes.
Wananchi walia hasara ya kuunguliwa vifaa, bidhaa kuharibika, wapo wanaokosoa hadi kwa saa 5. Wengine unakatika na kurejea papo hapo. TANESCO yaeleza sababu. So the blackouts.
Yeah.
They're not really, you can't regulate anything. Stima inapoteana inarudi immediately. So that power surge, when power comes back immediately after blackout, is burning stuff.
Inachoma.
Lakini ile interesting ni hiyo ya gari moshi.
Yeah.
Gari moshi inaenda ikifika tu kwa msitu hivi, stima inapotea, ama kunyesha, stima inapotea, inabidi mshuke.
Ikinyesha inaanua.
Electric SGR. Yes.
All right. Chadema ni mwendo wa kuvuana nguo.
Yes, the competition within the Chadema party, which is the opposition party, imepanda. Pa kuna Wenje, Lisu,
Lema.
Hache na sijui Lema.
Yes.
Wanang'ang'ania uongozi wa chama hichi cha kisiasa Chadema. All this in preparation for the general elections later. Trafiki wafichua kiini cha rushwa, wadau wang'aka. That story that was actually the big story yesterday on the dailies. Walishika traffic police wakipokea kitu.
Kitu.
Pale juu sababu Dorothy kujitosa kumvaa Samia urais. Kumvaa urais mwaka huu. Kama atapitishwa na chama chake cha ACT kuwania urais, Dorothy Semu atakuwa mwanamke wa pili katika orodha ya wagombea kiti hicho. So women in Tanzania now seeing the possibility of them going for this big position. Yes. All right, so these are just some of the dailies in the region, and we'll be back to take a look at the local ones in depth. For now, tuangazie maswala ya hali ya anga. And we start off with this picture of the continent. And you can see a lot of cloud cover, very serious weather systems towards the southern part of this continent, areas around Zambia, Mozambique, Angola, coming as far up as Gabon and parts of DRC. But once you move towards East Africa, the clouds disappear. Kenya, no cloud cover. Tanzania, just a bit of it. But when you come back home and you take a look at the weather situation, it talks about cloud cover all over the country. So inamaanisha kama Kenya tunasema kuna cloud cover, basi ukienda Zambia kuna nini? Kuna giza.
Yep.
Totoro. All right. So let's start off with Mombasa.
26 degrees feels like 28. Nyinyi mko na jua leo. Highs of 31 degrees. It's warmer there.
Yes.
Holiday weather.
Yeah, but a bit of cloud cover, but at least you can see the sun throughout the day. That's Mombasa weather.
Yep.
Tuangazie my home county of Nakuru. 13 degrees Celsius as we speak. More or less a similar kind of weather. A bit of cloud cover with a bit of drizzle. Starting from mid-morning. But from 7 to 9 hapo kuna kajua kidogo. Hiyo jua itarejea baadaye jioni. Highs of 26 degrees Celsius in Nakuru. This is comfortable weather for January. I know Nakuru can actually get extreme.
Yes.
January jua inawaka. Kuna parara, nyasi inaungua yote inakuwa tu yellow.
Nakuru for us. You know, I've actually lived in Nakuru for like 10 years.
Yes. So you may just as well call it home. And Nakuru is a beautiful place.
Yes.
Beautiful county. And we might continue talking about Nakuru.
Yeah.
Marsabit.
21 degrees, feels like 23, highs of 29. Cloud cover throughout, but a bit sunny as well.
Oh, yes. Marsabit, your weather is mbaya sana. I think this is a very comfortable weather. Let's take a look at Narok as well. Narok sometimes tends to be a bit tricky. 13 degrees Celsius as we speak. And when we talk about Narok, this also covers areas around Masai Mara. So if at all you're still on holiday in areas around Masai Mara, this is the weather you should expect.
Yeah.
Sunny throughout the day. It's kidogo cloud cover. Highs of 26 degrees. So not so bad. This is actually good weather, comfortable weather for a tour of the Masai Mara and other areas of Narok.
Yep.
Let's come back to the city in the sun.
16 degrees, feels like 15. It's a bit warm though this morning. Highs of 26, cloud cover throughout. It will be sunny as well, so good weather.
Oh, yes, comfortable weather in Nairobi as well. Yeah. So the weather patterns across the country, hakuna mahali iko extreme sana. Hata ile jua ya Mombasa is 30 degrees, 31, so it's very comfortable. Finally, let's take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi as we speak. This being at 10 minutes past the hour. Na Friday traffic sometimes hainanga mambo mingi.
Weekend mode.
Watu washaingia weekend mode, wanaangalia gazeti waone kama watapata offer. Lakini just remember, kuna mixologist anakuja studio. Anaweza kuonyesha jinsi ya kufanya mambo 1-2 hapa na pale.
Kabisa.
So hapa ndio inakuanga shida usually around Pangani interchange. Yes, it's beginning to build up. So guys coming from Kiambu Road, kuna mali inakutana hiyo barabara. That stretch is already building up. If you go further up Thika Road, it's looking good. Nothing much to report. Areas around Githurai, Garden City, Kasarani, it's very comfortable all the way. So if at all you're coming from Thika Road and you want to make it to town at least by 6:30, this is the best time to leave. You can get into town within 15 minutes max. Yeah. Tuende upande wa Eastlands. Tunaangalia barabara ya Jogoo Road. Yes, it's beginning to build up around areas between Makadara and Botela. Matatu zinajaa pale, right opposite the Makadara Law Courts. Wamali wanabeba watu wakienda town. But after that, it's looking green all the way towards City Stadium roundabout. Landis Road, this is Mudhurwa and Machakos bus station. It's looking good.
Yep.
A bit of traffic once you get to Haile Selassie Avenue, but this is towards the upper part of town. Kuteremka chini hakuna traffic at all. Up at the junction between Haile Selassie Avenue and Uhuru Highway, there's a bit of construction still going on. That's why you have this sign here. Nasema kuna construction hapo. Railway Museum area hapo, yes. So that's the traffic situation there. I can see something here around Nyayo Stadium. A bit of a snarl up, and this is on top of the expressway. So I think kuna delay pale juu around your roundabout ya Nyayo Stadium. So if you're using that, kindly let us know what's happening around that area. This is not usual for traffic there. Langata Road is looking good. So is Mbagathi Way. They changed the name.
Is it the one Raila Odinga?
Raila Odinga Road. Yes, it's looking good. At Prestige Plaza, kawaida pale ile cross junction because of the lights, a bit of red there, heading towards town. Further up, ukiangalia Ngong Road inakaa vizuri, junction, not so bad. Let's go up and take a look at...
Can people don't work on Friday?
Oh, they do, but hakuna haraka.
Yeah.
A bit of a problem here around in area gani. Hapa ni Kangemi. A lot of construction going on around here. With that bridge, plus the road there is still incomplete. Matatu zimejaa, watu wa mikokoteni, watu wa soko around this area at Kangemi. So that's why you see this stretch of red there. But after that, going all the way past ile barabara inaenda towards inaitwaje, towards Gigiri from here. Towards town beyond that, Westlands areas, kuingia town, it's looking good. So yes, this is the best time to leave the house as you head towards town.
Right about now, let's take a look at the quote of the day.
Ni kama hawana hiyo, lakini tuko na magazeti mingi sana locals. So let's come back and take a look at the locals. I think the biggest headline today, Judiciary under siege, is the front page of the Daily Nation. What started as social media-fueled protests against alleged graft in one of Kenya's most hallowed institutions has now snowballed into a push for removal of some of the country's most senior judges. The Judicial Service Commission is now set to convene and discuss the elephant in the room, petitions for removal of judges, following months-long attacks by a section of senior lawyers and litigants of alleged corruption in the corridors of justice. Now, this push is being led by none other than the former president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Havi. He's being backed by, among others, Gibson Kamau Kuria and senior counsel Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi. Will these 7 judges survive? Law Society of Kenya president has condemned their unfettered bribery and unethical conduct by judicial officers. Now, these are very serious allegations against judicial officers.
Yes.
Bribery and unethical conduct. Will it claim any of the 7 people that you see there on the front page of the Daily Nation? This, if at all it happens, will be a first. The only other person who has been removed from the lineup of judges of the Supreme Court in its history is none other than Nancy Barasa, who was the Deputy Chief Justice at that point. Akaenda akachuna mtu kwa mapua, akapoteza kazi hivyo. But now she's heading the Gender-Based Violence Commission.
Yes.
Yes. Right. So this, if it proceeds, it'll be very interesting to see. And what other plans, political undertones are there in the politics of who occupies a position within the Supreme Court? Other quick highlights on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Alarm as hundreds fail to report to varsities of a funding crisis. Many first and second year students in public universities are yet to report to various campuses for the second semester as uncertainty persists over release of government funds for the upkeep. Now, despite the Higher Education Loans Board holding billions of shillings, a court ruling that nullified the new funding model last December has frozen disbursements. This is a story on the back page. In effect, a lot of, and this is your university, Kenyatta University, ndo ametumia picha hapo. Yeah. Matters education on the back page as well. Kuppet threatens to have schools shut if funding crisis persists. You do realize the entire education sector is facing a serious funding crisis. Universities hawajui kama wataendelea na wale wengine pesa haiko, wameambiwa ngojeni tu pesa itakuja.
The education sector in general is a mess.
It's a mess. Yes. Back to the front page, Bungei moved in police shakeup. Adamson Bungei, the Nairobi police chief who led his colleagues in clamping down on protests last year, has now been transferred following administrative changes made by Inspector General Douglas Kanja. Matters politics, Muturi continues to bear it all. He's there, that's just a highlight. The story is on page 8. And woman's journey of pain and resilience. A very interesting story of a woman, Joyce Ongombe, who's fighting for her life at Kenyatta National Hospital. And the story is on pages 2 and 3. That's the Daily Nation today. Tuangazie gazeti gani?
All right, the Standard MPs live up to their laundry tag yet again. That is the top story on the Standard. Now, members of the National Assembly had no problem giving Ruto the nominees he picked without much consideration, putting to question their role in the appointing process, even as the president hopes the team will not only steady the Kenya Kwanza ship, but also deliver the plan. Right. You know, people are saying they have never rejected any. Actually, they have. Stella Langat.
That's
in August. Yes, the only one. They approved 19 last year, rejected only 1. So the questions are, hao ni laundry wanaosha tu na kupitisha.
Unapewa mwosho moja. Ukienda bunge, unatoka hapo bas. Clean bill of health. Interesting.
Mbadi walks a tightrope as he proposes to increase budget to 4.3 trillion Kenyan shillings. Now, Treasury has laid down an ambitious budget it hopes will not just be favorable to Kenyans, but also deliver the government's development agenda. However, increasing taxes will be met with resistance, but the borrowing options are also limited. In the policy proposal, Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi thinks issuing bonds will be, what is that? Will be panacea to filling the holes.
Panacea. Panacea.
Panacea?
Yes.
Will be panacea to filling the holes. That is on page 4 and 5 of the Standard.
Question is, are we being too ambitious with this budget? Remember even the 3.8 trillion shilling budget.
We are.
Many people felt, okay, fine, if KRA cannot collect that much, why are we working on a budget where we borrow at least 1 trillion shilling every year? Now we've moved from 3.8 trillion to 4.3. That's about 500 million shillings more. Most of which will have to go with a begging bowl and say, tumeunda budget yetu, tunaomba mtusaidie.
Naona wana risk tena. You see what happened in June last year?
Because the government hopes to raise only 3.01 trillion shillings through normal taxation. So it means that more than 1 trillion shillings, that's 1.2 trillion shillings, will have to be probably come from lenders. Yes.
Another story there is, I was beaten, stripped and starved. That is Bernard Kavuli, one of the 5 abductees released last week. He went to church to thank God for his safe release, telling horror stories of his experience with kidnappers. That is on page 3. He's actually the first one, the only one, who has talked of his ordeal in the hands of his captors.
So if you want to know what happens to abductors once they are in the hands of those hooded men, the story is on page 3 of the Standard, and he describes in detail what happened to him.
JSC to consider plea to kick out Koome and 8 judges. The Judicial Service Commission says it is looking at 4 petitions seeking the removal of 9 judges presiding over cases at the Supreme Court and the High Court. Same story on the Daily Nation.
All right. More quick highlights on the top strip of this front page of the Standard. KCSE graduates in limbo of varsity placements. That story, we've seen it on the Daily Nation as well. On the international front, inflation, Nigerians change diet. Wanakula nini? Sio fufu. Government hand in tea farm wars matters business. And finally in sports, Arteta feels Arsenal still in title race. Now to flip the paper, talk about local sports. Chan, mixed reactions as Stars land in a group of death. So Kenya, the die is cast, and the delayed 2024 African Nations Championship Chan will be held in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania in August of this year, after the draw was conducted at KICC on Wednesday night. However, it was not the night many Kenyans were expecting after national team Harambee Stars was drawn in what is being considered the group of death in the tournament that was initially supposed to kick off in February. So Kenya has been drawn alongside DR Congo, who are actually very good in football. Morocco, which are among the biggest giants in African football. Angola too, which are not so bad. And Zambia. So hapa Kenya ni kama kwa hiyo group sisi ndio tutaumia.
Tutashinda. Nani would say, Arusha would say, we will do it better. Yes.
And McDonald Mariga, the vice president of FKF, says, don't worry, tuko sawa, tunaweza ngangana. Tungoje August tuone. As the hosts, if they will treat us with kid gloves. That is the Standard this morning. Tuangazie Taifa Leo. Baraza la wanasiasa.
Kabisa. Na kinyume na ahadi ya awali, rais ageukia vigogo kumsaidia kuzima mawimbi ya uasi. Na kuidhinishwa kwa mawaziri watatu wapya na bunge la kitaifa hapo jana kumefanya baraza la mawaziri la Rais William Ruto kutawaliwa na wanasiasa tofauti na mwanzoni mwa utawala wake alipoonekana kukumbatia zaidi wataalamu. Now we have an addition of William Kabogo, Lee Kinyanjui and Mutahi Kagwe, who were approved yesterday for appointment.
Yes, and all these people have either served as members of the National Assembly, Senate, or as governors, because we have Kabogo, Lee Kinyanjui, Ali Hassan Joho, who've served both as MPs and governors. Initially, after the promulgation of the Constitution in 2010, the idea was that politicians will be left to Parliament, the houses of legislation, then Cabinet will be left to technocrats, wanaoitwa wataalamu. President Uhuru Kenyatta tried a bit of that, but even he eventually just fell back to a heavily political cabinet. William Ruto afichi, amejaza wanasiasa katika baraza la mawaziri.
That caricature yesterday, the one that was he was dipping his hands kwa bucket.
Ni hao alikuwa na ukota. Huko ndani kwa inaitwa nini ya takataka? Pipa la taka. Katoa hawa. Sio mimi nimesema, ni magazeti. Unaweza nikasirikia bure, lakini kasirikeni.
Utamfanyia nini?
Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Pale juu anasema Ruto Raila kuhudhuria kongamano la uwekezaji Nyanza. Rais Ruto na kinara wa ODM Raila Odinga watahudhuria kongamano hili la uwekezaji lililohairishwa awali. Habari yenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa 4. Mabadiliko ya wakuu wa polisi pia ni habari ambayo imepewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa hii. Ukurasa wa mbele anasema kamanda wa polisi Nairobi Bungei kati ya waliohamishwa. Pale chini Wakenya wengi wamekata tamaa ya makazi. Hii ni ripoti ya KNBS yasema Wakenya walijishughulisha na mahitaji ya msingi. Na maafisa wa kaunti gizani baada ya stima kukatwa na KPLC. Huku ni wapi?
Tana River.
Hawajalipa bill.
Huko ni kwa yule who is now being given very much support. No, that one is Trans Nzoia. I mean, yeah.
Hapa ni Tana River, hawajalipa
Tana River,
Kenya Power. Lipa bill. Israel yaua 46 baada ya mwafaka. Maafisa waliothibitisha watu 46 waliouawa jana kutokana na shambulizi la Israel. Masuala ya Middle East. Tukiangazia gazeti lingine, People Daily.
How Ruto built abduction squad is the top story there. Now, after disbanding special service unit, President assembled lethal team drawn from police, DCI and military to crack down on dissenters, claims rights crusader.
So yes, ni kama wanasema rais alikaa chini akasema mimi nataka leta ule jeshi, leta huyu. Namna gani sasa? Kazi yenyu ni hii. That's according to the People Daily. I think it's how they crafted the headline, how Ruto built abduction squad. That's a big headline there. And this story also features in the other dailies. It's not only on the People Daily. It's only that the People Daily has decided that this is a bigger story for this paper today.
On the top strip, fatten our parks, greedy MPs tell new pay team.
Yes. And yesterday, as they talk about the House of Parliament being a laundry, it's not just that they were approving the names of the nominees for CS positions, they were approving names of nominees to some very serious constitutional commissions like the Salaries and Remunerations Commission and Public Service Commission as well. So when they were talking about and debating the nominees for the SRC, they said na tunawapatia kazi lakini mkumbuke sisi pia muongeze pesa yetu. MPs wajisahau. Washaambiwa ndio tunawapea kazi lakini pesa yetu muongeze, wamekuwa wakikata sana. So I don't know if the SRC will be pressured to increase the parks for MPs as they've been directed now that they have finally been approved.
Matters Education, Kuppet rubbishes grade 9 rollout. That story is on page 6. Hapo kumekuwa na shida. No classrooms.
Yes, you know, Kuppet represents post-primary teachers, teachers in the secondary school. They've been denied a whole class because now they do not have Form 1s. Now they have a whole stream of classes that should be empty. They were hoping that grade 9 would actually transition to secondary schools, lakini wapi. So pia pale kuna shida ya fedha. Ile walikuwa wamezoea kuingiza na Form 1 hakuna. That's why they are complaining.
Yeah.
As a People Daily, matters business.
Now, top counties in borrowed shared phone use revealed. Now, a new survey on mobile phone and internet usage shows that Nyandarua, Nakuru and Laikipia counties have the highest population of residents using borrowed mobile phones in Kenya. Fresh data by KNBS shows that 22.2% of Nyandarua residents use mobile phones borrowed from neighbors, family and friends. Watu wa Nyandarua.
Na Nakuru pia.
What is where you come from?
Yes.
What is happening?
Ni kama simu hazitoshi. Lakini you know we share. We are very kind people. So kama kuna simu 3 na tuko watu 10, zinatosha.
Wacheni bwana.
After all, you're not always on your phone making calls. It's a gadget. Kitambo kabla tukuwe na hizi mobile phone na kila mtu ako na simu yake, tulikuwa na ile coin box ilikuwa shared. And if you are privileged enough to have that landline in your home, believe you me, then the entire village would be lining up to make calls and receive calls in your home.
Things are changing,
Yes.
Fred.
No.
Nunua simu.
Sharing is caring.
Hakuna hiyo. Now, MPs push for pay raise shoved after Gen Z demos. MPs are pushing for the implementation of a salary increment frozen at the height of youth-led protest in June 2024. Kumbuka wamefanyia hiyo kitu SRC.
And people should actually take this seriously.
Yes.
MPs are asking for a pay rise. Unakubaliana nao? Should MPs get a pay rise? Should MPs get a pay rise?
41% of urban dwellers favor rent controls. Now, 4 out of 10 Kenyans living in towns want the government to regulate rent to prevent arbitrary increases by landlords. This will be very nice. Well,
it's what do you call it? It's a liberal market. So how do you control rent as well?
Ni kuwa ambitious, but you know.
Interesting. Unfortunately, we do not have the e-paper copy for the Star, but we do have a physical copy. It's quite heavy today, being the weekend paper. The main headline on the front page of the Star says, State House ghost workers exposed. That's a big headline there. It also has an image of Raila Odinga meeting a number of African leaders as he continues with his last-minute campaigns for the AUC chairman's post. But back to the main story. A report shows that civil service has over 17,000 ghost workers, with Kenya Railways topping the list, and also State House being part of them. Kuna ghost workers hadi State House. Wanafaa wachunguze. Pale chini wanasema MPs wanasema keep off our pay, lawmakers warn just vetted salaries team. So wana threaten, we are giving you job, lakini mutupatie hiyo pesa. All right. So let's take a look at the cartoons. Alafu quote of the day tutaiangazia tukienda kufunga.
Yep.
The cartoons today, we do have 3 of them. And we start off with the one on the Daily Nation.
Your nominees will pass and the country will be more united. This is the former President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Advising his brother there. But now you see there's a leash on Parliament.
Yeah.
Hapa wamesemekana they are laundry. Hapa kuna leash. So they are both very confident. The president, current president, telling the retired president, don't worry, your nominees will pass. Yeah, will pass. And the country will be united.
Yeah.
So kazi ya bunge wasijali. Hao nisha wasort.
Yeah.
So nominees na washapita, ni ukweli walipita haraka haraka.
Yeah. This is the one, ini gani hii?
People Daily.
People Daily. That is Justin Muturi pale, ana spill the beans.
I may spill the beans on abductions.
Yes.
Alafu kwa akili yake anasema
fire me.
Na jana nilisikia leader of majority in bunge akisema that MPs, unajua there's been a lot of talk about how they will impeach Muturi. Kimani Ichung'wah said no, we will not bother with impeaching any other CS.
Yeah.
So they're very cautious about how they're going to treat CS Muturi. Unless now the president undertakes a wide reshuffle of the entire cabinet, then therein remove him quietly.
Yeah.
But targeting him alone, there's a bit of caution. That's the cartoon on the People Daily, and this is a standard.
That is NIS boss. Who, what? Nordin Haji. Who, what, when, where, and why? Ameshika hizo vitu za, is it arrest or abductions? Me?
Is very confident and even arrogant, if I may say so. Mutafanya, what, when, how, why? He doesn't have to answer. You know, that's the question. When it comes to NIS, they don't have to answer any question to anyone. Yeah. Yeah. Police, yes, probably IPOA can summon even the IG and ask a few questions. Who is going to summon NIS boss?
The president. Nani alipiga simu na
wakatoa
Leslie.
Akapiga simu akaambia achilie kijana. All right, these are just some of the conversations we'll be having with my panelists later on after the break. If we can have that poster for the guests.
Okay.
Even as we prepare for
quote of the day.
Quote of the day.
Tumengoja sana.
Again, it's Friday, people have time. Wanaweza kaa tu hapo wangoje. Yeah, let's listen to the quote of the day.
You've got to be in it to win it.
Yes, just a reminder of what we have lined up for you. Yes, State of the Nation coming up right after the break. Kevin Osido and Daniel Orogo will be in studio for that. Later on, Mixologist Amo.
On Feel Good Friday, we'll be dancing here this morning with DJ Granite as well, the baddest in the game, as well as Dance 32. All
right, so a lot to look forward to. Now you can interact with us on our social media pages. My X handle is at Freddy in the Morning.
TV47 Kenya on Facebook and YouTube. TV47 News KE on X at Anna_Dida. The hashtag is Morning Cafe.
Radio 47. Boom.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
All right, welcome back and good morning once again. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Freddie Ndimuli. Time for us to take a look at the big headlines on State of the Nation. And of course, the big headline on the Daily Nation, Judiciary under siege. LSK President has condemned the unfettered bribery and unethical conduct by judicial officers. And this is just one of the stories that has also been covered by our reporters here at TV 47. Let's watch the story.
At the foot of the CBK Pension Towers, a storm is brewing for the Apex Court. The Chief Justice, Martha Koome, and the Supreme Court judges find themselves at the center of a looming crisis. Thursday, the Judicial Service Commission, JSC, received a petition targeting the entire Supreme Court bench.
The petition received on 13 January 2025 makes allegations of gross misconduct and misbehavior against the aforementioned judges.
After an onslaught by a petitioner alleging rampant corruption and misconduct within the judiciary, the JSC confirmed it has officially received a petition seeking the removal of Chief Justice Martha Koome, Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, and Supreme Court Justices Mohamed Ibrahim, Dr. Smoklin Wanjala, Njoki Ndung'u, Isaac Lenaola, and William Ouko. The JSC also received petitions against 2 High Court judges, including Justice Alfred Mabea, citing allegations of gross misconduct and misbehavior.
The Commission has also received 2 separate petitions against Honorable Justice Alfred Mabea, Judge of the High Court.
Former Law Society of Kenya President Nelson Havi has filed a separate petition against Justice Lucas Lepres Naikuni, accusing him of incompetence in discharging judicial duties. According to the JSC, of the 935 petitions received against members of the judiciary, 862 have been finalized. 12 petitions have been forwarded to the President, recommending the formation of tribunals for removal. Article 168 of the 2010 Constitution outlines the process for the removal of a judge. A judge of a superior court may be removed only on grounds such as inability to perform due to mental or physical incapacity, breach of the prescribed code of conduct, bankruptcy, incompetence, or gross misconduct or misbehavior. Removal process begins with a petition to the Judicial Service Commission, which then recommends to the President. Within 14 days of receiving the petition, the President must suspend the judge and form a tribunal to deliberate. Ahead, Chief Justice Martha Koome and her team have a big task to clear their names over the alleged corruption bedeviling the judiciary. But now the big question that begs, will justice be served under the alleged unjust system? Lennox Sengre, TV47, Nairobi.
Yes, it promises to be one of those big stories that will dominate our headlines going forward, at least for the next 1 month or so. What started as social media-fueled protests against alleged graft in one of Kenya's most hallowed institutions has now snowballed into a push for removal of some of the country's most senior judges. The JSC is now set to convene and discuss the elephant in the room, petitions for removal of judges, following months-long attacks by a section of senior lawyers and litigants over alleged corruption in the corridors of justice. With me this morning is Kevin Osido, governance specialist, the Executive Director, County Governance Watch. Happy New Year. I think I can still wish you a Happy New Year. This is the first time meeting you.
Oh, yeah, precisely. I hear those who know the timeline, so I'll say that the new year is still new. Yeah. I mean, the year is still new until March.
Until March.
So, yeah,
so I'm still within time.
So Happy New Year to you, Fred, and grateful for the invitation.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
Now, this is not the kind of headline you expect in January, in the new year. 3 years, well, actually less than 3 years to the next general election. A petition for the removal of not just any judge, but the entire bench of the Supreme Court. Now, according to the allegations border on corruption. Even the LSK president has condemned unfettered bribery and unethical conduct by judicial officers. This is huge. This is probably going to dominate our headlines this entire year, if at all they actually get to probe these judges and the petitions that are before the JSC.
Yeah, quite true, Fred. And indeed, it takes us back to lots of experiences that Kenyans who have had petitions up to the Supreme Court level have had to go through. And I'm sure that if you look at a number of those exciting moments when Kenyans have had to seriously engage with the Supreme Court, then it reminds me of terminologies like hot air, you know, and many, many other unfriendly languages. And you notice that even at that point in time, it was quite difficult for Kenyans to engage on topics or subjects like the removal of the bench of the Supreme Court, largely because a lot of times you want to also look at the seat of power, where is the heart of the person who is ruling or running the country. And as at the point in time when we were listening to some of these petitions, particularly the latest being the 2022 presidential petition, then you probably would have imagined that they were speaking for President William Ruto, particularly given the context within which that petition was being submitted. Mm-hmm. But that as it may be, then you realize that the conversation has been contained and sustained, because even at that time, people were saying, we suspect that money could have changed hands. And so for people like the former LSK president, Mheshimiwa Nelson Havi, to continue having this engagement around unfettered bribery and unethical conduct and the inability of some of those judges to really discharge their functions largely around right to justice, fair administration action, and just the fact that when people expect the Supreme Court to behave in a certain way, then they don't see them meeting that particular bar. And especially because, Fred, these are ladies and gentlemen who are called learned friends, so you expect a certain measure of behavior and attitude and character, which I think that in many cases, most Kenyans, and particularly those who engage with the Supreme Court, who are largely now the petitioners, have not seen the Supreme Court behaving in that manner. But
it will also not escape our notice that this is a largely political court, the Supreme Court. That's why they even have an even number, because sometimes they get to vote when they make a decision. It means that there could be some serious political undertones into this kind of allegations that, yes, we cannot deny the fact that there's a lot of politics will play around this.
Yes, yes. And the moment you see, for example, the appointment of the chair of the JSC, then I think that already begins to stabilize the conversation around the politics. Because remember that, as I said earlier on, we saw the manner and the attitude, the character of the Supreme Court in major national interest conversations like presidential petitions and many, many other cases. We have had the BBI case, we've had a number of other cases, the NADCO issues, even going up to the Supreme Court. And so Kenyans would have expected that there is a manner in which at least some of you took a ground, like what is the mood of the country, and then walk within that mood. But be that as it may, then you ask yourself, where is the heart of the seat of power? So the politics then comes in, and you want to try and pacify the people who are wielding that power. For this particular Supreme Court, and particularly the president, we have not seen a very positive demeanor, particularly when it comes to engagement with that seat of power, quote unquote, because the moment the president was sworn in, and the Chief Justice and President William Ruto filled in, for example, the judges, the 22 judges that President Uhuru Kenyatta failed to appoint, then we saw conversations around stifling the judiciary, budgetary issues, financial concerns, ability and capacity of the Supreme Court to do its work, because there's a manner in which it was suspected that even the Supreme Court president was actually pointing fingers at the executive and therefore the president. And so there's not been a very stabilized relationship between the executive and the judiciary, particularly when it comes to aspects where we expect that the executive would support the judiciary to do its work, despite the fact, Fred, that the Constitution envisions that these three arms of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, would then be independent institutions. But yes, they are independent, but you expect that there is an element of dependence, that one would be relying on the other to be able to effectively do its work. So the politics around how the executive and the judiciary, particularly the leaders of these two particular arms of government, has not really done as well in terms of even understanding that positive, stable environment for them to be able to do their work.
Now, talking about the three arms of government, because we've seen for the past 1 year, 2024 was there was a lot of vocal criticism, especially directed towards the houses of legislation. There was a lot, and many people argue that, yes, there's a clear, obvious lack of public confidence in Parliament. The executive has its own problems. And many people would have hoped that the judiciary would be the last line of defense. Now, it's waking up to such a headline and a petition for the removal of the entire bench of the Supreme Court. That means that all three arms of government are suffering from serious lack of public confidence. Allow me to welcome Daniel Orogo, political analyst, into this conversation. Daniel, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Pleasure to see you. We haven't met this year.
Yes.
Yeah, good to be on the set, and apologies for arriving quite a little bit late.
At least you are still on time for our very first conversation. Now, if at all, all three arms of government are suffering from a serious lack of public confidence, well, where does that leave us?
I mean, thanks, Fred. And of course, that points a finger to a nation that is probably sliding to anarchy because, like you've mentioned, that our constitution envision political stability that is sustained by the, the independence and the stability of these three arms of government. And all of them have had their fair share of trouble, as you have indicated. One, we had been expecting, and I think the protest that we are still reeling from, June or mid last year, was outrage, frustration to a non-functional legislative arm of government, and that is the National Assembly, both National Assembly and the Senate. And I think Kenyans were, their behavior or their approach towards, going to the street was clear demand and clear show that there seems to be a problem of lack of confidence in terms of, the roles that are given to Parliament. And I think every time I mention this, I always say that looking at the protest, and you saw there was a breach in Parliament and then also another breach in the Judiciary. I think most of us always focus only that there was a breach in the National Assembly. But if you walk through, by that time, you could see that there was clear a demand in a breach on the Supreme Court entrance. So it clearly shows that Kenyans probably were sending a message to these houses of Parliament or houses of the independent institution that indeed there is clear lack of trust, but also lack of confidence in terms of fair administration of justice. But again, I've heard you asking, Kevin, if indeed that could be a political undertones towards what's going on. Of course, underneath, there is. We are struggling in terms of reconstituting elections body as well. But remember, even in the background of reconstitution of elections body, we are here looking at then in a crisis. Someone probably is creating a crisis in the electoral management in the future, because then you would understand that when anyone would petition IEBC in the delivery of election of 2027, then that could go definitely to the Supreme Court. And here we are looking also instability on the Supreme Court. So I think clearly Harvey and the rest could be working in proxy for a very strong hidden hand of political heavy-tones. Because looking at it, then it's not just a coincidence that then even as we were demanding for a constitution, immediate reconstitution of IBC, in the background of non-functional parliament, both Senate and the National Assembly, and of course, executive that is having its fair share of trouble, including internal dispute in terms of one of the cabinet secretaries still even asked, we didn't know even one is resigning or not, because citing abduction of his son. And probably another one next week is going to come with another allegations on how they're dissatisfied in the sitting in the executive. Then again, the war is on the judiciary. So I think there is clear turbulence. Yes. And it's not an accident.
Across the entire government.
Someone is interested in benefiting from the instability for political gain. And I'm not afraid to say that probably this is looking towards 2027 election.
Okay.
Delivery as well.
Talking about 2027 and the series headline, it means that there's a very high possibility that we are going into that election not just with a new electoral body, but also with a new Supreme Court in place. What does that mean?
Yeah, of course, talking about 2027, if we have it in 2027, because as things stand right now, it is not clear. Because the Constitution expects that on the second Tuesday of August, in the fifth year, we need to have our elections. But if you look at the kind of trajectory that we have had based on our political experiences, particularly with elections in this country, 2007, 2008 really gave us an opportunity to look at how we undertake our elections and the significant reforms that we must be able to do. And I think, I believe that some of the institutions, like the Kriegler Commission that we had then, gave us very clear mechanisms. And part of those recommendations were that you cannot have mega reforms within 2 years into an election. And this is not something that is new, even to those who are actually at the center of politics and power in this country. And so it is true that there are people who are very keen and clear around how to either delay the elections, postpone those elections, and therefore destabilize this country and use that particular instability as an excuse to want to, benefit selfishly against the expectations of the Constitution. And we have also seen, Fred, that there has not been a very clear mechanism insofar as the commitment to want to implement the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and particularly from Kenya Kwanza government. And Kenyans would have expected that based on the promises that were made around, tumepanga, tumetenga, tukuna mikakati, that really a number of these programs that this government is putting in place would then be those that support public interest, public opinion, and really are able to carry Kenyans through, their patriotic duty as citizens to want to love their country and also to be active participants in how governance is done, leadership, and indeed the politics. So there are people who are going to lose in this particular war and the journeys that are going on, and they're also going to be major winners. And part of those major winners indeed are the politicians. And hence the reason why I believe we are seeing all these delays. Because all we need, Fred, is political goodwill. And we are not seeing that goodwill to be able to, move us and transit us into this very murky political narratives, conversations, and environment of 2024 into the new year 2025, and of course, post-February 2025, again, once the AU elections are done, we are setting up ourselves to something else, and we do not know how that, again, is going to inform a number of reforms that we expect from the executive, the judiciary, and also the legislative processes. Because a lot, I am sure, is coming up, but I believe that Kenyans are looking for some stable environment to be able to go around their businesses, put monies into their pockets, and the economy is able to safeguard the interests of a majority. And
it's interesting, Bonosido, that you mentioned the fact that there could be forces that are keen to change or adjust some of the provisions of the Constitution as far as the states are concerned. When Orogo, there's already a precedent. Article 89 on the delimitation of boundaries has been defied and without any consequence. This is a year later. We still don't have that. It is expressly provided for in the Constitution. We defied it, there's been no consequence. So even when it comes to Article 101 on the elections, at the date of election, second Tuesday of August in the 5th year, that too can be defied without consequence. Is that what we are saying?
I mean, that is what, clearly, that is what we are steering towards. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned is normally in the legal practice probably, and in the understanding is that there seems to be, people get cozy with just violation of laws and no one raises an alarm about it. And then it sets a precedence that probably there could be more violations. And when people become so lethargic about not asking why certain clauses in the Constitution are violated, and to that extent no action is taken about it, then what do we steering? We are staring at a state where people will just be very numb, about any violations or any injustice that is meted on them, and nobody would be set to a situation where no one cares. And that's what I say. The onslaught on the judiciary, even if they have a problem of their own making, true. And you could see a number of, in the petition that is filed by, the three, individuals, you could clearly see from the articulation and from their confirmation that indeed there are certain judges at the High Court, and there are certain judges at probably they are mentioning the Supreme Court, that in one way or the other could have acted in a manner that violates what the provisions of what their public office requires them to do. That's true. Secondly, there is an issue, but beyond that, I think even beyond filing petitions, then there is also a political move on it. And one of it is exactly what I'm saying, is putting public in a level where, and with the clauses that you mentioned, and probably there are so many that we are still looking at that could be violated, where a public would not even dare challenge these things, because one, we are creating doubt in the performance of judiciary. That judiciary cannot be trusted. So what are you telling the public is that where are you going to file those petitions? Even if on the highest Supreme Court is having problems, share problems on their own. So you have here an IBC that is not constituted, yet elections date are very clearly stipulated in the Constitution. You have IBC that is not clearly constituted, yet the Krilga Commission says the bare minimum of reconstituting that IBC, and no one talks about it. So, Fred, it's and I've told you, you hear the issues about people getting, frustrated around the fair administration of justice. Kenyans, do not believe on the electoral system in itself. And even further, they cannot petition it in the Supreme Court, because then, by the time we'll be arriving at 2027, there'll be an issue about, do you trust that Supreme Court now, where you want to go and file a petition. So I think here there is a systematic narrative to violate, the rule of law and administration of justice as well.
Only that, Fred,
I think, just a moment, because I'm being told we need to go on a break. Yes, I just hold that thought, Bwana Osido. The big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation, Judiciary under siege, is what we're discussing, and we'll continue with that after the break. You're watching.
Looking to pursue quality competence-based training? Welcome to Equip Africa Institute, a TVET arm of Mount Kenya University, accredited by the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Authority and other relevant professional bodies. Equip Africa Institute has campuses in Nairobi, Thika, Malindi, Mombasa, Nakuru, Kisii, and Kitale. We offer a diverse range of diploma, certificate, and artisan courses in various disciplines. Here at Equip Africa Institute, we are committed to delivering high-quality, industry-relevant training that equips our graduates with essential skills, values, and attitudes for effective service delivery in the current dynamic world. To enroll, call 0785 667771 or 0733 599553. You can also visit our offices or website on www.eai.ac.ke or send an email to admissions@eai.ac.ke.
Allow me to take this opportunity to invite all potential candidates to start applying for the upcoming January-April 2025 intake. And we guarantee you the best services if you choose to join Equip Africa Institute.
Equip Africa Institute, promoting competence, innovation, and excellence.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. We continue looking at the headlines with these two gentlemen, Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch, and Daniel Orogo, Political Analyst. And I must apologize, I cut you short, Bwana Osido.
No, never mind. I just wanted to say that even as we engage in these very mega conversations around national issues, we must really understand the role of what is called the judiciary, and indeed even the different levels of the various courts. And if you look at why I think this is of serious focus is largely around cases that have been of national interest and how the judiciary has had to exert its power and responsibility in these cases. But it must not escape our minds that there are cases that happen every day and that the judiciary exercises its requisite power in the right sense of both mind and state in terms of dispensing those cases. And we have judges who have done excellently well in terms of what cases they have been given. We also have judges that I would say, as I hear people calling them quote-unquote rogue judges, who are now at the center of focus of the petition.
And that should be a serious issue that Kenyans need to address as well. The
Precisely.
LSK president says there's unfettered bribery and unethical conduct.
Precisely.
The main allegation in this petition is against corruption. Serious, what they're calling juris pesa.
Which is
That's
why
a serious allegation that cannot be ignored.
Which is why I'm of the opinion that we must enjoin, as Kenyans who are of as close as to expect the right justice and fair administration to be exerted, and probably even begin to demand for an audit of the judiciary. What is it that they have done properly, and what is it that we feel? Because a lot of these conversations really focus on the national major issues. But if you go to these prisons, you get people who, sababu tu alichukua kuku ya mtu, and he is not able to get what is required, amewekwa hapo 8 months. Or I was talking to a gentleman who served 8 years at industrial area, and you asked him, so what is it that happened? But if you listen to the stories and what goes on behind what we see, I think there is a lot of interest that these conversations that are going on in the judiciary really need to excite us to begin to enjoin and get engaged. And further to that is to ask ourselves, kwa nini jaji akianzisha kesi in this particular court, kidogo tunasikia amepewa transfer?
Yes.
What is this thing that is happening, and what is the process? What is the role of JSC and the leadership and management of JSC? Of what magnitude and interest should that be Kenyans, particularly because of the kind of reforms that these conversations are now giving us around the judiciary?
But Orogo, you must agree that yes, there may be some politics and all this, but there's also a serious problem within the judiciary that needs to be addressed.
Seriously, and that's what I'm saying. If then we have lack of trust or semblance of mistrust in the other arms of government, the only refuge that Kenyans would seek would be on the judiciary, which probably is the custodian of, the rule of law and should, dispense justice and fair administration of justice, as Kevin, has mentioned. Now, you see, could be that the problem that a country can easily slide into anarchy is when the custodians of law and justice seems to be engulfed, in a malpractice, in corruption, like you have mentioned. And it's clearly the fear of us as a country might not be probably because there's a problem in executive, yes, could be, or probably that the parliament is not playing its, oversight role or over legislative role properly. But when it reaches to the judiciary, then I think that really spells a danger in the future of, this country, because we have seen a number of issues that are so thorny to this country being dispensed wisely in the judiciary, and that it turned a leaf, sometimes turns a leaf in where Kenyans would probably have lost hope that this probably is gone by the other arms of government. And then there is a sense of relief that comes from the judiciary, knowing that we have a stable, we have independent and clear-minded judges who are able to bring stability in the country. That in itself really spells stability and meaning well to the country. But now when there's clear allegation that is infiltrated, and there is clear allegations that the judges who are the custodians of law are now engulfed into the vice, then I think that sends a lot of fear into our spines. I mean, it becomes then we are staring to a situation where the country is probably going to slide into anarchy. Why? Because when politicians cause trouble and when citizens cannot agree on a certain issues, then I think it is fronted to the judiciary to give interpretation and make judgments and ruling out of it. That then would spell that there is justice in both ways. But what happens if that is no longer there? It means since the rule of jungle, people will begin to take law into their own hands.
Indeed, we've started seeing some of that.
Yes, and if judiciary cannot have a proper muscle to hold the government to account, if members of parliament cannot properly discuss abduction, then judiciary also fails to tackle it. If judiciary fails to pronounce themselves into thorny issues, for example, on, the bills, the money bills, then citizens would just do what they did on 25th. So what we are staring into is now when citizens would say, no institution is working. The last is the judiciary. Now let's, take law into our hands. But let us also acknowledge that there are judges, as Kevin has mentioned, give the devil his due. The are judges who are very, sober in terms of giving their ruling.
Okay.
I don't know where Justice Odunga went to. I really, for me, that was a paragon, someone who was a paragon of virtue in terms of fair administration of justice. I've heard is in Machakos or anywhere, but I think if we have people like that, who could we refer to, so that the country will also not mob lynch the judiciary in the pretext or in the background of a sharp political infiltration, then we need to have such people.
Yes, and indeed, this is something that will continue for the next 3 months or so, at least now that the petition is already before the Judicial Service Commission. Allegations of corruption within the corridors of justice, and according to the LSK president, it is unfettered bribery and unethical conduct. A petition filed for the removal of the entire bench of the Supreme Court plus 2 other senior judges of the High Court. That will definitely continue. And now I want us to move and take a look at the other arm of government and what's happening there. This is the Houses of Legislation. MPs live up to their laundry tag again. That's a big headline of the Standard. It is also part of the stories covered by our reporters here at TV47 because MPs yesterday sat to approve the nominees for cabinet as well as nominees to other constitutional commissions. So yes, Parliament approving 3 cabinet secretaries. That's a story we're watching next.
In a special session on Thursday, the National Assembly approved the appointment of 3 cabinet secretaries, all former allies of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, to join the broad-based government.
Honorable Lee Kinyanjui, Investments, Trade and Industry. As members of that opinion say aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
However, recent remarks by Public Service Cabinet Secretary Justin Biden Muturi about abductions dominated the debate on the National Assembly Appointments Committee report. Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah and his minority counterpart Junet Mohammed calling on Muturi to either resign or align himself with the Kenya Kwanza government.
If your motivation is service to the people of Kenya, but if your motivation is extortion, if your motivation is deals in government, then you will find that maybe this particular Department of State is better than the ministry I'm currently serving in, because probably you are not able to get the kind of deals you are getting in another office, Honorable Speaker.
So, Mr. Speaker, if you don't wait for God to come to your house to talk to you, if you think you cannot serve the government anymore, go do farming. Go do other things, Mr. Speaker. Or become something else. Become a professional. If you're a lawyer, go and open a law firm and serve the country that sphere, Mr. Speaker. Because you cannot be a cabinet secretary who's issuing contrary views to what your government is saying. It's immoral, actually.
This is as members of Parliament expressed confidence in President William Ruto's decision to form the broad-based government. They say the expertise of the 3 nominated cabinet secretaries will help steer the country forward and restore public confidence through effective performance. The 3 cabinet secretaries were nominated following a meeting between President William Ruto and former President Uhuru Kenyatta, a move seen as crucial in regaining the support of the Mount Kenya region ahead of the 2027 general election.
While he was there, he ensured that there was free Wi-Fi in the urban centers in Kiambu County. He ensured there was a digital county transformation service, including educating the people of Kiambu County.
A small docket, Honorable Speaker, is a docket that balloons the economy of our country. All what we manufacture, Honorable Speaker, must get the destination. And all what is possible to invest, Honorable Speaker, any small-scale person
relies on this docket, Honorable Speaker.
The House also approved a report presented by the Defence, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee chaired by Belgut, Member of Parliament Nelson Koech, endorsing the appointments of former Agriculture and Livestock Development Cabinet Secretary Andrew Karanja as an ambassador to Brazil, Ababu Namwamba to UNEP, and former Inspector General of Police Nur Gabo to Haiti.
Of that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Cabinet secretaries and ambassadors are expected to take their oaths of office as early as Friday. Elizabeth Motuko, TV47, Nairobi.
Yes, the ayes have it, and could it have gone any other way? According to the standard, no, because that house is simply meant to launder. Their job is as a laundry, to clean anything, mosho moja, anything that comes their way, you clean it. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they did not just approve the nominees to the cabinet, they also approved quite a number of nominees for other commissions. One of them is a Salaries and Remunerations Commission. So yes, they approved the names of the chairperson and others, but they also took the opportunity while doing that to push for a pay rise that had been shelved after demos. Then they did that as they debated the new SRC team. And this is a sort of National Assembly we have, Bwana Osido, that they are more concerned about their own interests. In a debate like this, they just turn political, do the bidding for the judiciary, for the executive, fight wars against CSs, then demand for their own packs. And you wonder, are they even trying to redeem themselves from what we saw last year?
I don't think so. And the sad thing is to really observe, with due respect, that some of the successes in the Gen Z protests and the revolution that we saw have been politicized and more or less muddied in a lot of propaganda and narratives that do not favor the interests of the citizens. And so by saying that, what I mean is that we would have expected that the government would have focused largely on what the Gen Zs and the majority of the Kenyans were saying, to really look at issues of integrity, transparency, accountability, service delivery, and stabilizing the economy of this country. But what we saw, people fighting individual wars. You know, NIS did this, the president did that, it was not me, it was that person, they went and sat. And we actually saw Deputy President getting impeached for the first time in the history of our 2010 Constitution. And so we lost that opportunity to focus on what really the questions were. And I would have hoped that our members of Parliament, particularly the National Assembly, because that is where the vetting is really domiciled for these particular appointments, that they would begin to carry that spirit into looking at what kind of leadership are we looking for, and what are the kind of individuals that can be able to birth this leadership and deliver, to be able to deliver the services. And so if you look at a majority of these nominees, most of what I think took the wider scope of time were integrity issues, accountability issues. You're being told about issues that happened in 2011, for example, Mheshimiwa William Kabogo and the Mercy Keino case. You're being reminded about things that happened in 2013, 2017, about pending bills to the tunes of, I think, 549 million in Kiambu County when you are governor. And you cannot be able to account for this. And yet you have Parliament and its committees that are supposed to safeguard the interests of the citizens from service delivery perspectives and also judicious management and usage of financial resources. But then yet that means nothing to our members of our legislators, particularly insofar as executing their role to represent the citizens. You go to Mheshimiwa Kagwe and yes, of course, praise him for COVID-19 and all these things, but again, integrity issues around KEMSA and the losses that we saw. And remember that we even saw PSS losing their jobs at that particular point in time. But yet that the person who was at the helm of this conversation still comes back. And part of the issues that actually saw the former deputy president lose his power was also the KEMSA issues and part of his companies and the kind of stories that we were told on TV, and as we observed that particular impeachment process, and that really means not so much to our members of parliament. And you go to Mheshimiwa Lee Kinyanjui again, and still issues around audit queries when you are governor of Nakuru County to the tune of 8 billion plus, and that it doesn't matter as long as President William Ruto and President Uhuru Kenyatta meet and they shake their hands. And so there must be, in my view, as we talk about even SRC, there must be a carrot to be dangled. And Fred, what of course now Kenyans know that before what we see happening on the front of our televisions, there's a lot that happens as we are sleeping, and there's a lot of conversations that happen, before all these things come up. So as much as you can even say, these three gentlemen come from one region, and that is not in the proper spirit of Article 10 of the Constitution of national values and representation, and but it doesn't matter as long as, yes, they are all Kikuyus, but we don't care that there are parts of these countries that still do not have representation in the cabinet. As long as we know that SRC will be approved, we will appoint them, and then they will give us an addition into our salaries. So it doesn't matter what you people say as Kenyans. As long as sisi kama viongozi wenu are comfortable, then that is where the conversation should end, which I think really needs to bring us back to our responsibility as citizens. And particularly in asking the question, what kind of leaders do we vote for? When I see people like my good friend Mheshimiwa Rene Mayaka standing and saying, oh, you ensure that there was free Wi-Fi. How do you prove that Mheshimiwa Kabogo actually ensured that there was free Wi-Fi? And does it mean that if one constituency in Kiambu called Ruiru, for example, has Wi-Fi, then all the other 15 sub-counties or constituencies have free Wi-Fi? So the degree of information and knowledge that our members of parliament also are expected to have as our representatives, really honestly, needs to meet a certain bar, so that we are confident that you are representing us effectively, and that it is not because your party leaders met and shook hands, and that what fits you and is fit for you is also fit for the entire...
And what you're talking about has been captured by the cartoon on the Daily Nation. The fact that President William Ruto met his predecessor. And if my director can help me with that cartoon, because the cartoon on the Daily Nation has a two gentlemen meeting, but one of them has a leash on the House of Parliament, and there is telling the other one and assuring him that your nominees will pass, don't worry, and the country will be more united. It is a foregone deal, but yes, we seem to be in agreement that when it comes to Parliament and this process of vetting, it's actually simply a formality, and we're not getting quality from that. Bwana Orogo, this could be the weakest link that we've seen in a very long time among the three arms of government.
Yeah, and it's a sad state of affair. As I am sometimes taken aback, just wondering what goes on in the process of preparations for vetting. There were damning allegations before that we have seen. I think one of the members of parliament might have unconsciously said that their colleagues have been in toilet receiving money and bribes and all these things before any bill is tabled for discussion and for passing in parliament. That was letting the cat out of the basket. A snippet of what goes on in these two houses of legislation. Shame. I mean, it's quite sad that with a constitution that has been, proudly accepted to be a progressive one in the region, if not in the continent or globally, but we have seen that the custodians of this constitution are the forebearers in terms of violating it. it is also quite sad state of affairs that the National Assembly, where the buck should actually stop with, has rubber stamp, has been the one that is conducting this motion moja. Everyone nowadays, if you want to be, approved in the National Assembly, any position you have, I think you just need to make a visit to, the house in Upper Hill and Shawerio, anywhere, and just make deals, and your person is in. Mm-hmm. You see, the appointment of Parliamentary Select Committee or people who are vetting is a political process, and therefore it will give birth to a political process. And this is why you see the nominees who are going to hold very critical positions that deserves an impartial vetting. Mm-hmm. The process should include thorough, effective, open, and meaningful public participation. I think this is one area that Osido is very passionate about. Mm-hmm. Matters of public participation and citizen engagement in the vetting of this nominee. Mm. But you see, at what level is that being carried out? From what I am seeing and from what we are mentioning, it seems public participation in the vetting has ended into reports being forwarded to the vetting committee from the Office of the Auditor General, from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, probably from DCI in terms of conduct, but I am yet to see a petition from any interested litigation from any citizens who have fronted their frustration in certain nominee and they have been given hearing in the process of vetting. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It is a field of play for politicians. And that is why I agree with what Kevin was saying. I am interested to know, in the evening on the night before vetting, what happens?
And that's a question.
I am very interested to find out, because we cannot have a very critical offices. For example, agricultural offices. Fred, you know what happens in this docket? We are still healing from people who are given stones that were fertilizers. That has not, we've not really found that.
The fact that it would appear the National Assembly is more focused on what they stand to gain from this process of vetting, either through what they receive in the toilets, according to the allegations that came from them themselves, or what they can push the SRC to give them in terms of packs. But Osido, this cannot just be about the benefit of members of the National Assembly, surely.
It is a very sad state of affairs. It's quite an unfortunate process, but you see, it is politics at play. And if you look at the political economy mechanisms and the analysis behind that, you realize that sometimes there's a lot of games that happen. Now, for example, if you look at the report that was released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics around the state of our economy, and the narratives by the who is who in power around the complaints of the citizens, where they are saying we don't have money. Some of us went to the holidays with nothing, no Christmas to celebrate, particularly from the counties. The state of security is doing so bad. Almost everything is not working. Education, the other day we saw mothers storming the office of the CS of Health, And then they tell you, those who are within government will say, we are doing okay. In fact, even the economy is stabilized. Last year we were at this %. Today we are doing this %. The shilling has also, so that they begin to whip your emotions around what they feel is right, and they force you to want to believe in that. And that's why partly I think that even the leader of majority, Mheshimiwa Kimani Ichung'wah, really spoke about communication and how these nominees were going to communicate government's business to the citizens, because largely they are not doing very well. And so you expect that at least having been in the cold for these nominees, and then you come back in, whatever carrots that are dangled to the members of our National Assembly, particularly for the sake of this conversation, should help you to understand what the citizens are feeling. So that regardless of what the politicians discuss and what is happening behind the curtains, at least should give you some sense of responsibility. That when I come in as CS of agriculture, for example, I know that agriculture is fully devolved. So I am going to ensure that we fully devolve this function to empower counties to do their work. And that should therefore spur the citizens' confidence in a government that has been eroded with serious integrity concerns. And Orogo, I almost said Mheshimiwa Orogo is mentioning fake fertilizers.
There's a future, Mheshimiwa.
Of course, and congratulations in advance. He's been running for office, by the way. so that when you're given this opportunity and with a little intelligence that I believe that these nominees should have, both as party leaders, politicians, and leaders in this country, they are able to go over there and begin to help the government to redeem the confidence of the citizens. But if you listen to what they still continue to say, then you ask yourself, then where are we headed to as a country? Trade. How do you want to engage with really where a majority of the citizens are? At the counties. Because trade is almost fully devolved as well. But if you listen to how the citizens' power is supposed to be exerted at that level, you don't hear government interest to be able to empower the citizens, and particularly around what we must do to regain the confidence of citizens. So, of course, it's a political game. The analysis around those who prepare even the candidates for vetting is something that is properly and closely guarded. Mheshimiwa Orogo, it is true that Kenyans actually even submit petitions, but you will not hear the degree of engagement with those petitions. And when we raised this issue with the leadership of Parliament, lately you hear, for example, Mheshimiwa Wetangula will read, we received 800 petitions and a majority of them, narrowed on this. We received this from this area and this is what, and that we are grateful that you have been able to deal with them. But is there proper mechanism from agencies of government, for example, DCI, EACC, to engage? I felt a little bit disappointed, and that really needs to help us see the kind of politics that go on around impeachments and even this kind of vetting processes, where an institutional commission like EACC will be called at the last tail of an impeachment process of a deputy president, and the acting CEO, my good friend who is now the CEO, will say, this is the first time we're actually engaging on this matter, and that our members will still feel it fit impeach an individual without fair administrative action, without fair justice, without fair hearing. So it is a good thing that the drafters of our constitution gave us power as citizens to be part and parcel of these vetting processes. But I think there are lessons that we are learning, Fred, that we also need to begin to ask ourselves, how do we redeem our role as citizens, and that Article 1.1 provision of all sovereign power resting in the citizen. And I wouldn't be shocked if in the next few months, the protests that we saw, still coming back, and particularly bordering on the abductions, bordering on the state of the economy, and largely the state of the nation, because I don't think we are doing very well.
Plus, we might just be staring at the reality that they, members of the National Assembly and the Senate, will have their packs improved, because they really focused on that yesterday, while talking indirectly, of course, to the SRC that they approved. Do you think that in itself is another bigger problem? That in this day and age, the current economic situation, the prevailing economic situation, what happened to Parliament with the Gen Zs last year, now they still find it, they still have the confidence to push for a pay rise?
I mean, when I was prosecuting that matter, I think probably you cut me that short, and I was coming close to, what the folly of a representative democracy, Fred. And sometimes, not only myself, I wonder when you also look at Parliament and wonder if these are the kind of people that represent you. If indeed you deserve to be represented by people that you are seeing debating, by people that you are seeing vetting, and those that you are seeing approving and sometimes impeaching. That is the folly that we have for representative democracy, by the fact that we are unable as a citizenry to really confidently say that indeed this is the person I elected with all my heart, with all my soul, and what it takes. And whatever he's saying represents my view. I mean, Fred, if we were all there and looking at the vetting processes, do you think Kenyans would have approved the 3 nominees? That probably is the answer outside there. All of us know. Do you think Kenyans would clearly say, we deserve these 3 nominees to serve us as the cabinet secretary? If Kenyans, for example, would say no, why did the parliament, for example? What happens? That's why I was coming to you and saying, I am interested to learn the conduct of behavior and the psychology of parliament around few days to the vetting. That be it said and done. And you asked very, very, very critical question is, what is the threshold then of members of parliament's ability, capacity, and the experiences in terms of trying to vet? Do we have a parliament that has now abdicated their duties, the 3 cardinal duties, 4 that are envisioned in the Constitution, and have begun embarking on horse trading? For example, I pass the 3 nominees, you give me a paycheck or increase. For example, I impeach this person, you do this. So are we seeing a house, a honorable house, turning to be a horrible house? Are we seeing that is a house of business, for example, where people are profiteering? And it's not my words, it's the words that their own, have said in different platforms. So then do we need cleansing of parliament in that particular extent with few days to election? So it is quite a sad state of affairs. And we are very confidently saying that we have tried as a citizenry to find ways to recall members of parliament. It is not possible. Those particular means are so stringent because look at the laws of recalling the member of parliament. It could not be possible. Then what is then possible? Because in between you have almost 5 years to another elections. So then it calls for accountability to your own member of parliament that represent you. But that is not enough because we have executive that has clearly, clawed parliament. That the decision that is called from, the house in the upper hill finds its way into parliament. So I think we are at a sad state of affairs where Kenyans, and I agree with what Kevin is saying, is when it reaches a time of clear frustration and Kenyans believing that they have tried all means but it's not working, then I think we could be seeing a semblance of again going back to the streets to demand for more accountability. But then what happens if the state has scared and has shrunk the civic space so that citizens fears doing that because of abduction, fears doing that because of being tracked down? So we are at a situation where I don't know what happens with this republic as we await for elections, because even on that elections, some of us cannot access our national IDs because they have levied higher taxes or higher fees again in obtaining those important documents, and they have not reconstituted IBC again. So, Fred, I think we're in a limbo as a country.
All right. And by the way, Fred, if you look at, just to make an addition to the conversation around the salaries and the increment, and part of the reasons why the Gen Zs and largely a majority of Kenyans were frustrated by the increments were that we are not doing very well to also raise revenue as a country. And there are many, many factors that relate to that. But even government's investment in terms of expanding the opportunities and the streams to raise this revenue, we're not doing very well. Mm-hmm. And the Gen Zs were like, how do you want to raise your salaries when we cannot even afford school fees? We cannot even, as citizens, afford healthcare. We cannot afford many things. And even the service delivery areas where you are supposed to be keen to be able to dispense your responsibility, like infrastructure, roads. We still cannot move our goods from this area to that area. And the standard is telling us that the CS actually is proposing an increment of 4.3.
Thank you for that, because I wanted us to move to that one now.
Into the budget. So you
that
ask
our budget is going to move
by 500 billion. So you ask yourself, is that the money they want to use to entice SRC? To pay MPs, or what is really the service area?
And let's focus on that now, because now we have a new CS for Treasury.
Yeah.
Last year, the biggest problem we had was closely linked to the budget-making process, and that was a genesis of the entire revolt by the Gen Zs and the protests and everything. And then we were talking about a 3.8 trillion shilling budget that many felt was a bit over-ambitious, because by then we could not even raise 3 trillion in as far as revenue is concerned. Now we're looking at a proposal for a budget of this is a record budget, 4.32 trillion shillings, against a revenue collection of 3.01 trillion, meaning that we'll need at least 1.25 trillion shillings borrowed to finance that budget. For an administration that has been talking too much about debt, and debt has become the main excuse of why nothing can happen, is it really the way to go? Because I'm seeing even in the East Side pages, page 5, that the state is eyeing more Eurobonds to raise 10 trillion shilling budget, debt, yet we are going for more debt.
It is not proper, and hence the reason why Kenyans are getting frustrated every single day. And we are going to get to a level where you walk into a restaurant, and because you're nicely dressed like you are, Fred, you make your order, and a group of young men and women walk in and they sit with you. And they're like, wewe leta order yako, lakini unapopewa yako yetu pia iletwe. Yeah? And you're thinking, because you are mheshimiwa, they're making their stories. When the bill actually comes,
brought to you,
wewe unaletewa yako, and they're like, patia hata huyu ndugu pia, mpatie hii yetu. Because Kenyans are getting frustrated day by day. And this is against Kenya Kwanza government's wish, because President William Ruto told us very many good things that he was going to do for Kenyans. And year in, year out, big statements, big promises, but nothing so far to show for it. In fact, from a number of the sectors, lots of struggles, lots of big talks, but it's so hard, Fred, to pick one thing that you can say from any of these sectors. Whether it's education, look at the kind of trash we are in. Healthcare, women are walking into CS office, to want to demand answers. Can the president and his government tell us at least one thing that is working to excite these heavy budgetary interests? And further to that is to listen to our economic advisories. And I don't mean those government presidential economic advisories. I mean institutions from private sector, from civil society, from counties, and the people who are engaging in mechanisms and streams of revenue generation. So that when Mheshimiwa Mbadi talks about an increment of 4.3 trillion, as you tell us about where you want to get this money, debt should not be, borrowing should be at the last tail end of that particular list. Because there is a lot of resource in this country. If you just go to the counties alone, and counties are now beginning to really do very well in terms of their own source revenue. But you don't see a lot of investment from national government, particularly Treasury, to engage with county governments to help them deal with these ceilings that we are talking about. So the concern, in my view, should be how do we begin to have conversations that also push certain debt responsibilities to county governments, because that's part of the reasons why, again, we have discussions with the fourth basis of, revenue allocation, the formula that has been hitting headlines since December. Now we have a court case. That's where we have concerns around pending bills, because the responsibility of national government to send monies to counties, which largely is used for not service delivery, but for payment.
And then interestingly, you find that the conversation that counties are now even keen to do more in terms of education, including bursaries, of which is not even a devolved function. We'll come back to that discussion.
This is what it needs to be. So Mheshimiwa Mbadi is a good person, and having engaged with him from the political parties aspect, we really expected so much. And he came up even from the vetting process, and the Kenyans were happy that, now I think we can stabilize the country. But can we see something much more better?
Yes. Last year we had a lot of this statement that as Kenyans, we have to live within our means. That was coming from the president himself. And that's why he was saying, justifying the need for higher taxation and a reduced budget, trying to cut our expenditure. But Is it really happening? Have we forgotten everything that happened in 2024 simply because we are now in a broad-based government? Mwosho mmoja. Now whatever happened, whatever promises we had, now we can forget about it and continue as it was.
I mean, broad-based government brings everyone on board. So that means that a lot of interest needs to be financed and needs to be maintained. And I'm looking at this, Fred, because every time you sit on a panel with someone from, Kenya Kwanza affiliated or government side, they will always say that the economy is doing well.
And by that, it would have been very nice to have Senator
Yes,
Nyamu,
to have Senator, and I don't know why. I don't know why.
Unfortunately, Senator Karen Nyamu cancelled at the last minute.
She got busy.
We really need to get why this justification of, our economy is doing well. And normally they cite about we've stabilized key economic sectors, agricultural production. They say very big achievement, but you see that it's gravitating towards the opposite. And I'm looking at these, for example, that now our public debt as of September stands to be at 10.79 trillion. On the other side, we are looking at, like you've said, raising a budget to meet the 4 trillion plans. So the proposal, which I keep on finding problems with, and you've also, alluded to it, what are the containment measures? Every time that even in the background of a budget of a public debt of 10.7, in the background of a debt repayment for 1.5 trillion that is due to the foreign creditors, all right? We are still mentioning that the other sources of revenue that we should be looking at is still exploring the international,
domestic, local, and international borrowing is the biggest.
It is. This is the attention of this government. What does that mean? Is that if you are still continuing to have foreign creditors, it means that you are still going to finance payment that is of high interest rate. How do you finance that? Is through, levying taxes, to the citizens. And I have seen a number of proposals with this government covertly to still raid the pockets of Kenyans. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't mention this, they have still embarked on measures. There's a proposal even to look at what would be, our M-Pesa transaction. What are other costs, other mobile transaction costs that the government should be looking at, So I think, Fred, Kenyans are really pushed. And look at this, every time there is a foreign, overtures, there's times of diplomatic engagement with this government. Of course, there is an aspect of diplomacy in terms of stabilizing our relationship with Japan, with China, with US. But in the background of this, how then would the government in, the off-cameras discussion would be, how do we get money? How do we borrow, from your government? How do we become part of, samurai, for example, part of the bonds?
Begging ball is
it is, the hidden, because you look at and the nation has actually given an account of, the bonds or the requirements of the loan facility from this government.
Is the standard.
Is the standard, is the standard, that you trace when were these concessions done, then it is in between the time when there was a diplomatic relationship, with a diplomatic visit. So the fear is, wherever I see the president on a foreign tour, one thing that I know is that when he lands down at the airport, then there's another loan another basket of loan that has come with. And this is really causing a lot of strain, a lot of pain to Kenyans. But this is one thing that we should see.
What does this communicate to the Gen Z who was very vocal on matters budget process last year? We saw what happened. That was a life-changing moment for this country. It was a historic moment for this country. It would have actually even cost this administration its tenure.
Precisely.
Yet, months later, even with a broad-based government, a new CS for Treasury, you're talking about a bigger budget, probably higher taxation when you come to the finance bill of 2025. What are we communicating to these people, to the young Kenyans?
What the government is, when you say we, I think you mean us or you mean the government?
The government is communicating to us.
I think what the government is telling us and the Gen Zs and us is that it doesn't matter what you do, what you say. And that is why at the beginning of the segment, I indicated that we lost the opportunity. But however, despite the losses, because that was muddied into politics of accusations and misjudgment, we must sustain the call to accountability, the call to transparency, and the call to integrity. And I am very impressed, especially on public participation processes, because for the first time, we actually saw our National Assembly leaders going to town hall meetings, to discuss public participation processes in an effective manner, to engage with citizens. But then the sad bit of it, Fred, is that we do not get the reports of what the people said and what has been taken in by government and what probably are recommended, both by government in terms of what we must do now, the quick wins, the mid-level issues, and then the long-term plans that government has. And that is why I think that the government needs to begin to ask itself, why are we here? So that, for example, when the Gen Zs have demonstrations and President William Ruto puts in place an institutional agency called the Debt Management Committee or something of that sort. I paid a very little interest in it because I believe it's unconstitutional. But then, where is the report? What did they find out? When we are told that we still have a debt burden of about 10.8 trillion, for example, can the CS embody, in the spirit of that citizen engagement and citizen interest, and especially given his role as chairs of Pick and Pack, or particularly Public Accounts Committee, engaging with the National Assembly members, and really being at the forefront as a leader of a party in terms of the governance institution of ODM and Azimio largely, so that coming into the broad-based government, most of the things that you used to say then, because I suspect that is why President William Ruto liked him to be able to be part of his plan to stabilize the government. So can we see you giving us a trajectory of, when we say 10.9 trillion or 10.8, what does that mean? How long do we need to pay? How much are we paying per year? Because I see in this analysis that we are doing over 1.5 trillion, and 2025-2026, we've done up to 11.5 billion on foreign creditors, etc.
That is due.
Yes. Can we have a clear analysis on how long do we need to pay? And I remember at the heart of the Gen Z protests, Kenyans were even saying, can we open a pay bill? So that to 1 shilling, 5 shillings, because we saw that happening. And people were actually, contributing monies even to support the protest. I have seen my friend Morara, people contributing towards his accountability processes to buy a car and buy a proper public address system. Can the government begin to have citizens getting involved in these processes so that we also have accountability concerns? So that other than raising questions around who we are paying and how much, the role of citizens, and then the institutions of governance, for example, KRA, that are tasked with the responsibility of revenue collection and generation. Can you also give us a clear analysis of how much we are doing as a country based on V2 kwa ground? If the economy is not doing very well, so how much are you collecting per day? Because what we have had, which is really properly drummed up, is that we are losing 2 billion per day. So against this 2 billion, what are these gaps? Why are we losing them? And what are we doing to deal with those gaps? And then we ask ourselves, so what do we need to do in terms of debt management and the financing strategy? Where are we not doing right as a country against what we see other countries? Because Kenya is really globally profiled, so quite highly. That is why we set a candidate for AU. Other countries like Djibouti will also match us, try to match us and say we're also setting up a country. So other countries are watching us. But is it a good story to say that year in, year out, a majority of our expenditure as a government is towards debt repayment as opposed to service delivery and making the lives of Kenyans better? I don't think it is a good story to write home about.
And indeed, the biggest headline of 2024, as far as Kenya is concerned, was the fact that the Gen Zs protested the results or part of the budget-making process, in particular the finance bill of 2024. And that was a life-changing moment for everyone.
Yes.
Yet this year, we're talking about the possibility of more taxation, higher taxation, same way like last year, to finance a 4.3 trillion shilling.
And I think where we lost it was when the country was headed towards having a discussion about, for the first time, compelling the government to come clean on what is our foreign debt and what is our national debt. I think it was towards that situation where we as a citizenry, in the height of the protest, because one of the things that has persistently happened to the regime is that any time they are cornered to, explain why we into this economic turbulence, the issue would always be is that this is an inherited problem. And to that extent, then, it makes it difficult to debate and make it difficult for our citizens to know. Because as much as we believe that government exists in perpetuity, that if you have one government, must always fast-track the development, then it was a time for us to demand then who is responsible for all this mess that we're seeing, because the current regime is not taking responsibility, blaming the other regime. So I think we reached at a time where we have a problem with our historical debt accumulation. And to that extent, everyone finds a justification as to why no one should hold them too much to account in explaining for this. But then you ask a very important question. What does it mean to the efforts that were done by the Gen Z protest? I think the issue was about finance. It was about the bill. It was about
financing the budget.
It was about the budget issues. That again, our government and our MPs have shown a middle finger to the Gen Z protest, and have erosioned the gains that were made in terms of putting the government to account, because the budget was withdrawn. Remember, that was withdrawn. The president conceded, and he said that he would relook into. There were measures that he painstakingly announced in his national address in terms of urging people to live within their means. This compelled him to dissolve the entire cabinet, sectionally. And there was a belief that the people that we are going to have would be people that understood. So Kevin has said that Mbadi is good as a person, but I think he is
a good friend as a person.
He is into a system that is so corrupted that you have to justify the mistakes that you find. You have to be within these particulars. It is not right. It is actually not right to make these proposals because he knows very well that these are the things that led to the protest. For example, raiding into people's accounts, still accumulating foreign debts, taking bonds that comes back with huge interest. Same old thing, doing exactly what he said would not be done when he was in opposition. So. Yeah, I mean,
it's the exact same thing. We are staring at a 4.3 trillion shilling budget, which is a record figure. Even in Kenya, speaking about 4.4 trillion shillings is unheard of, probably in Tanzania or Uganda. But in Kenya, 3.8 trillion was already a record. Now we're looking at 500 billion shillings more. Final comments. What's the way forward now? All this, if you look at this, and I have about a minute for each one of you. If you look at the headlines, nothing is promising here.
So to start with this, to thank you for the opportunity, but largely is to really ask government for more responsibility, be much more responsive to the interests of the citizens. We want to appeal to the institutions of governance to do the work that they have been given by Kenyans and the Constitution that is expected of them to be able to do, and largely to look at the state. As we talk about the state of the nation, what is the state of the economy? I want to appeal to Mheshimiwa Mbadi. Please have engagements with citizens and especially leaders of sectors, the economic sectors. For example, agriculture is still not a waste. And in fact, agriculture really drives the backbone of our economy. What must we do to be able to excite agriculture against the other factors like climate change and etc.? And I get very troubled when I listen to people who are expected to respond to some of these questions, like cabinet secretaries that are being vetted, really giving responses that are not as promising. So I want to appeal to institutions and individuals like Mheshimiwa Mbadi to consider having engagements with the sectors that are macroeconomic drivers, and largely bring in the counties to be able to also assist in evaluating the revenues that are therefore boosters to our national budget.
Thank you, Bonosido. I only have about 30 seconds for you, so you can give us a parting thought.
I think a responsive government requires a responsive and understanding citizenry that is engaged. So I think my appeal to citizens is that we should not lose our sense of internal vigilance. We must continue prodding this government. We must continue holding this government to account and calling government to order, and so that we are able to receive service delivery.
Okay.
So I think for me, looking forward is that wishing Kenyans a good weekend, and hoping that we are a country that would be anchored in the rule of law.
Asante sana, Daniel Orogo, political analyst, and Kevin Osido, the executive director, County Governance Watch, our panelist this Friday morning. As we take a look at the headlines, the big one on the Daily Nation: Judiciary under siege on the Standard. MPs live up to their laundry tag yet again, and Mbadi walking a tightrope as he proposes to increase budget to 4.3 trillion shillings. These are just some of the headlines on this Friday, January the 17th. It is a feel-good Friday, despite the fact that the headlines are not looking very nice. Right here at TV47, you're looking for DJ Granite is in the house for some lovely music. To stand by for that. We're going to be having mixologist Amo in studio. Yes, getting ready for your weekend. Atakuonyesha vile utafanya mambo hapa na pale. Ile chakula ya weekend unaelewa? You know what I'm talking about. Plus, Dance 32. A lot of dancing coming up with my colleague Ano Dida and the Weekend Q, Bansi Kimuyu. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. Have a lovely weekend.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2. What position were you? Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.